Hey, we are doing equations of circles and what that looks like on a graph as well. So let's go ahead and look at what the equation is. So this is your basic equation where it shows the center and the radius of a circle. So if you notice, if this center right here is HK, the H goes here and the X or the K goes here and the radius squared. So I'm going to show you exactly what that looks like because that probably is really confusing at first. Let's go ahead and look at a couple of these. I have on my board here 3 circles that I drew. And we're going to start with this one. And I'm going to show you the standard equation. Not the standard equation, the basic equation where it's going to be the center and radius equation. So if you know that your center is 4 and 4, 3, that's where this is. It's over 4 and up 3. And the radius from here to here is 4. From here to here is 4. Then you can plug it into the equation. So you're basically putting it into x minus something squared plus y minus something squared equals your radius squared. That's the basic formula for a circle. So what you do is you take your center and you plug it in, the 4 and the 3, and you take your radius and you square it. So that would be 16. Okay, not so complicated. The one thing that you have to be careful of is when there's negatives involved. Okay, so let's look at this one here, the small one. The center is -8, 2, and the radius is 1. So again, I'm going to be doing x minus something squared plus y minus something squared equals my radius squared. Now, when I plug in a negative there, it's going to change the sign, because if I'm subtracting a -8, it's going to make it a +8. And then right here, I'm subtracting a 2, so that's just going to stay -2. And my radius, if it's 1, and I square that, I'm still going to get 1. That's the only number that can be the same number as the radius. That's the only one. Notice all my other ones change. Okay, look at the circle down here. They're both negative. So I'm going to do x minus something squared plus y minus something squared equals my radius squared. Okay, -4 is going to make this a +4. -6 is going to make this a +6. And 3 squared is 9. So hopefully this isn't too complicated. That's kind of an example, 3 examples for you there. Let's look at some of these. When you don't have a graph and you're just looking at it, it's pretty simple. This would be x plus 5 because you're doing the opposite sign, and y minus 6, and that squared is 49. So if you get the pattern, it should be pretty easy to plug these in. Whenever you have a 0, you can just leave it as x squared because you don't have to plug it. I mean, if you want, you can plug in a 0 there, but if you notice, x plus 0 is just going to be x, so it's the same thing as x squared. X squared plus, and then it's going to be y plus 3 squared, and that's going to be equal to 4, because 2 squared is 4. So right here I have x minus 2 in 1. Oh, and this one is 0, so we can just do y squared equals 10 squared is 100. Okay, right here, if you have the center at the origin, it's just going to be x squared plus y squared. That makes it easy. And it's going to be equal to 1 squared. And that would be a 1 unit circle right at the center of the graph. Okay, this would be x plus 2 squared and y minus 2 squared, and 6 squared is 36. Okay, so that's basically how you can plug in whenever you know the center and the radius, whether you're looking at a graph or just given the information, you can plug them into this equation. Okay, let's take that and kind of work it backwards. Let's say I'm given the equations, and I want to look at the equation and tell what the center and the radius is. One thing you have to remember is that you're doing the opposite signs here. So this isn't going to be -210, it's going to be 2, -10. And my radius has to be the square root of 121, which would be 11. Okay, so let's try this one. This would be -5. And this is, nothing's with the y, so it's going to be 0. And the square root of 100 is 10. Okay, right here, there's nothing with either one, so it's the center is at the origin. And the square root, now anytime you have a square root of a number that doesn't have an exact square root, like this one had an exact square root, 3 doesn't, it would be 1 point something, 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 something. Instead of giving me a decimal that's rounded, give me the exact answer and just put it as the square root of 3. Okay, right here, this would be -9, and this would be +7, and the square root of 1 is 1. Okay, so that's basically hopefully helping you understand what the equation is and how to use it. What we're going to be getting into is, and I think they even give you another example here. Here's another example, and this one would just be written with the 2 in place of h. The -5 would make that a positive k, and then this would be 9. So same idea, you can get it by looking at the information given or looking at the graph and figuring out what the center and the radius is, and you can come up with the equation. So another kind of important thing is to be able to get that equation when it's not given to you. If you notice, this is the equation that we've been using for a circle, where it shows the center and the radius. But if I were to actually multiply that out, so I have x, anytime you have x minus 2 squared, it's like x minus 2 times x minus 2. If I were to FOIL that out, I'm basically going to get this as my answer. Same with y plus 5 times y plus 5. It's going to give me this as an answer. And then that's going to stay the same. Okay, then what I'm doing, what they did in this next step is they took away the parentheses, and then they combine like terms. If you notice, you have a 4 here and a 25 here, that makes 29. And if you subtract the 9 to the other side, you're going to be left with 20. Nothing else changed. They did put it in order from highest exponent to lowest exponent because that's standard form. And so this general format is sometimes given to you, and you have to know how to get it from there back to this equation so that you can graph it easily. So we're going to try that. And we're taking it from this standard equation, and we want it to look like that so we can say what the center and the radius is of a circle, or we can graph it if needed. Okay, so let's look at this first example, and I'm going to write it down, and then I'll enlarge my screen. So you're taking it, it's x squared plus y squared, and you're going to probably want to do this with me. Hopefully you're writing this down and working these steps out with me so it kind of sticks in your mind a bit better. Okay, so this is standard form, and our first step right here is talking about just combining, not combining, but grouping together the ones that are like terms. So, or not like terms, but the same variable. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. I'm going to make this bigger and work this out. Okay, basically you want to get your x's together, and then you want to get your y's together. And in order for us to, once they're together, in order for me to factor that, it's going to work out nicely for an equation of a circle. It's going to get me that x plus something squared if it's a perfect square. So what we're going to do is we're going to complete the square and make sure it is. So we're going to do x squared minus 4x plus something, and I haven't changed anything. I just left a box there because I'm going to be filling something in there later. Okay, now I'm going to group my y's. So I have plus y squared minus 6y plus something. We're going to be completing the square twice. And then we don't really need this number here. We want it to the other side. So when I move it to the other side, it's going to become negative. It's going to be -8. Now, what I want to do is I want to complete the square. And if you remember from Algebra 1, completing the square is just taking this middle term here, dividing by 2, and squaring it. And we're not doing the entire term, not the x, just the coefficient. So negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. Squared would be positive 4. And this number in these boxes are always going to be positive. It can't ever be negative. I don't care what the number is that we're using. Okay, right here, half of this, dividing it by 2 would be negative 3. And then squaring that would be 9. So if you notice, on this side of the equation, if we split this into this side and this side, I just added a 4 and a 9 to the side that weren't there before. So in order to keep the equation balanced, I have to do the same thing on this side. I have to add a 4 and I have to add a 9. And you can do it up and down like I'm doing, or you'll see when I go back to the example, it shows it sideways. Okay, so this would equal 9 plus 4 is 13, minus 8, that equals 5. And you should, after working everything out, you should always get a positive number here that's greater than 0. Otherwise, your equation is not an equation of a circle. Your circle doesn't exist. Okay. If you notice this part and this part, there's two sets, and we're going to factor them so that they are x with something squared plus y and something squared. And the way you get this number is you look at this number that you had in the beginning and you divide it by 2. That divided by 2 is negative 2. That divided by negative 2 is negative 3. And that's it. So right here, this would be the equation of this. And if I wanted to now, I could say the center is 2. It's got to be positive, and positive 3. And my radius is the square root of 5. That would be my answer. Okay. Let's come back here and I'm going to show it to you, the steps, the same steps that they did working out here. Oops. Darn. Okay. So right here they did, let me go back up here. They separated into the x's and left a place to complete the square. They separated into the y's and left room to complete the square. And then they moved the 8 over to this side just like I did, and they left room for whatever they add to one side, they have to add to the other side as well. Okay, that leaves them with completing the square. When you divide that, you get negative 2, and that squared is 4. When you divide that, you get negative 3, and that squared is 9. And so if I added 4 and 9 on this side, I have to add 4 and 9 on this side. Okay, so you can see they have the same two groups, this group and this group that we're going to factor. And they factored just like we did. Half of this is negative 2, half of this is negative 3. So if this were a positive 6, this would actually be a positive 3. Whatever half of it is, and you're including the sign. You need to make sure that you're copying the sign of this middle term because that's what you're looking for. And then the center and the radius would be 2, 3, and the square root of 5. So they do have some other examples for you to try. I'm going to scroll down so you can see them. And what you should do is pause this video because I'm not going to be able, I don't have enough time. I only get a 15-minute video. I don't have enough time to go through all of these examples, but I do want to talk you through this. You would need to move these y's over to the other side so the sign changes. The 8 doesn't need to change because it's already on the side. And this should be your answer when you're done. So try it, pause the video, try it, and double check yourself. And then another practice one that you can try is this one, where if you have it right, your answer should be in one of these 4. Okay, and you can always pause the video. And here's another one that if you factor this right, and you notice this is a negative 27, when you add in the numbers, this should end up being something positive. So your numbers that you're adding should be more than 27. And your answer should be somewhere down here. So try these, and hopefully this video helps. And if you have any more questions, just let me know.